We're going to go ahead and get started if you guys are ready. Thumbs up if you're ready. Sweet. Okay, so we are going to be presenting today. We are the San Diego Emerging Museum Professionals. Our presentation today, our panel today is entitled "It's Brutal Out Here. It's the Future of Museum Work for Emerging Museum Professionals." My name is Tiana Lyons King. I am currently the Visitor Services Lead at Mingay International Museum.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Ocio-Largizabal. I'm the Marketing and Events Coordinator at PARUT. I had 8 years of previous experience in the nonprofit museum worlds before moving on.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Mikey Farron. I'm the Museum Exhibition and Visual Arts Manager at the California Center for the Arts, Escondido. It's a very long title. And so, like Tiana mentioned, we're all part of EMP. I don't think they mentioned what boards they're on, so I'll just quickly do it for them. Tiana is on our Advocacy and Outreach Committee. It's a new committee that she'll be talking about at the end of the presentation today. John is on our Programs Committee, and I serve on the executive team, so I do a lot of treasury stuff. I, weirdly, am the senior, me and another person are the senior most team members. So in case you don't know about us, San Diego EMP is a local chapter of the National Emerging Museum Professionals Network. Our goal is to provide resources, professional development opportunities, and networking events for museum professionals within the first 10 years of their field. So how many of you today consider yourself an EMP? Raise your hand. Fantastic, amazing. It's not always that at a conference there's a lot of, right? There's not always a lot of EMPs at conferences, so I'm super excited today. So one thing that I'll just briefly mention about our group is that we're a brand new board. I joined in 2019, shortly before the pandemic, with my other board member, Emma, who's in the audience today. And it was just the two of us after the pandemic. And so us, with the help of our old president, Manny, rebuilt the board. And so we've expanded our idea of what we consider EMPs in light of the pandemic. So people who may have left the field but are interested potentially in coming back. Museum lovers, so people who are interested in the tech side of museums but may not operate professionally in that capacity. So it's a really exciting group with a lot of exciting things. So just a brief overview of today's panel. We're going to address, first and foremost, the current climate of museum work. So that'll be first up. Then we're going to talk about what is the opportunity gap for EMPs. So how do EMPs fit into the current state of the museum field? Finally, we're going to talk about what STEMP is creating in terms of programming to address that need, and so what we're trying to do. And I think we have a couple ideas on how your museum can help us out, right? The best investment you can make is in your staff. And so how can we help emerging professionals? Okay, so I'm first up. Stuck with me for a minute. All right. So, entering the field, I think it's pretty safe to say that right now museums are in a time of flux, right? Where it's such an exciting time to be in museums. One of the things that drew me to the field when I first joined was this idea that museums are now community spaces. There's a drop off. Museums are now seen as community spaces, not just repositories of artifacts, artworks, or knowledge that can be kept from people. So we have a responsibility to represent our community, and to me that's the most exciting change that's happening in museums right now. So that kind of guides what I consider to be like an overview of the state of the field. So very exciting, but it also means that we have a huge responsibility to look inward. So I hope that we're getting comfortable with having these conversations about racial inequality, economic inequality. I think class is something that comes in a lot that is invisible in many ways. Linguistic inequality, so how are we using language, both in terms of English and Spanish, especially in our region, but also thinking about how can we communicate clearly across all education levels. And to do that successfully, the staff at museums needs to truly reflect the demographic of the communities in which they serve. Currently, they do not. We try our best, I know, but currently the latest research, which I'm pulling from CAM actually, is that museums are roughly 80% European American, so white presenting, and female. So we're overwhelmingly female driven in our spaces. And I think if we think about our own spaces, our own institutions, some are doing a better job than others, but in general, those numbers are reflected pretty consistently. And they're also reflected within museum studies programs at colleges and universities. So we see this pipeline of how are we missing out by not including those people early on and getting them into the field, both in terms of education and making sure they have the resources to work in museums in a capacity that they would like to work in. So that's just something to keep in mind about the demographics. The other thing that I'm currently really interested in talking about is the fact that we have 4 generations actively working in museums. So we have the 2 largest generations in human history. That's a statement. In recent history. We have the baby boomer generation. They are holding on to jobs much longer than in... Sorry, I'm like choking on my own gum. That's horrible. So we have the baby boomer generation. They're the largest generation post-war. They're holding on to their jobs for much longer than their predecessors. Gen X smashed right in between the second largest generation, the millennials. That's, I think, what we all identify as up here. And millennials are entering their late 30s and early 40s. So I think a lot of times we think about them as being 18, 19-year-old kids, but actually we're eager for opportunity and for a chance to really grow in these positions. There's a lot of competition. And finally, we have Gen Z, early 20s. They're getting their feet wet in the field and they're eager. And the most exciting thing to me about the 4 generations working in the museums together is that there's different attitudes about technology. I think that's something we can all relate to struggling with our coworkers. There's different levels of understanding about technology. Just what work should be. That's definitely one that has a huge age gap between it. What a workplace should be, how we should balance personal and professional lives. That's on our minds a lot right now, but it's especially important to the younger generation of workers and the emerging workers. So the other thing that is really guiding a lot of museum work right now is salary transparency, at least for emerging professionals. So in 2019, a public Google form was released where people were encouraged to put their salaries, their education levels, their job titles, and the regions where their museums are. And it was mind-blowing. I don't know if anyone participated in it or saw the results, but overwhelmingly what was shown is that museum workers are underpaid compared to the private sector. Yeah. I think we all know that. We're pretty right? We are passionate about what we do, so we get paid less. But that's not right, and that's not how it should be. But the information that I think is most important to remember is that for what the level of education that a lot of these roles require, right? Master's degrees, PhDs, a lot of times at a minimum, that's inaccessible to a huge group of people. Paying for a master's degree out of pocket, tens of thousands of dollars for a job that might yield a $50K salary is an outrageous request for a lot of people. And so who are we leaving out by putting that in our job descriptions? Who are we leaving out by not encouraging other forms of education, maybe informal, maybe hands-on? So thinking about that. The other thing, especially with COVID is kind of the star of the show right now, but I think if we're honest with ourselves, we'd see that these problems were kind of here before. And that's a lack of available jobs because of lack of funding. So we all struggle with funding, all of our institutions. It's at the top of probably all of our minds. And if we're happy with our staff, we love them, they do great work, maybe they're not so much of a diverse bunch, then there's really only 2 options, right? You have to wait for someone to vacate their position, or you have to find more money to bring on new positions. That's a challenge in both cases, especially with COVID because of the economic uncertainty. So a lot of people are holding on to jobs that they might have left and might have vacated, allowing for a younger generation of workers to come in. So that's also a challenge. And then just some numbers, just so that I'm really setting John up. It's not so dire, I promise. I'll end on a high note. But AAM has done amazing surveys in the last 2 years over COVID, and I think it's important that we acknowledge the reality of our work. And that's, on average, since March 2020, about 30% of US museums have significantly cut their staff. Significantly. I think it was mentioned in the last panel, but I don't want to not mention it here. Overwhelmingly, the positions that were cut were front-facing workers. They were the education staff, who a lot of times are not only are they generally part-time workers, but they're also the most diverse in a lot of museums. More workers of color are in those positions, which means they were more likely to get laid off or furloughed. So again, about 37% of museums noted that there was significant in terms of hundreds of thousands of dollars lost due to days closed because of COVID. And we're going to be feeling that, I anticipate, for a couple of years. There's going to be this uncertainty that I think will stay with us for a very long time. But again, as I mentioned, this isn't all bad news. Half of the institutions that were surveyed did say that they plan to rehire to pre-pandemic staff levels. So that's an exciting opportunity. There's a lot of people that left the field permanently, unfortunately, because they just couldn't afford to stay in it any longer. They couldn't afford to be laid off and brought back on. So it's an unfortunate loss, but it's also a great opportunity for people to enter the field so long as those jobs do come back. I think everyone who was around for the Great Recession probably knows that a lot of those jobs never did come back. But optimistically, museums are looking for pre-pandemic levels. So what does that mean if you are currently in the first 5 years, first 10 years of your career in museums, John?
Thanks, Mikey. Yeah, so kind of like what Mikey said, this topic isn't new in any sort of way. It's more like it's gaining exposure, just like a few other topics that came along when the pandemic hit and everything. So for a portion of this time, we're going to have a metaphorical mirror placed in front of you all. Mainly because the gap has already been there, and with everything that has come along or happened within the past few years, that gap is slowly widening. Mikey gave plenty of resources to look, to refer back to, and they're really getting left out, and we're hoping to kind of help bridge that gap together. Because what a lot of people have been seeing is that EMPs are being left out. Either one, because there's a low ceiling in terms of their actual growth, in terms of their career, or there's really no other way to kind of explore a separate passion that you might have, or something that you want to kind of do within your work or in organization. Usually the alternatives are going back to school, which isn't exactly the best way to go about it, because most of the time that means you also have to leave your job. And that kind of starts the cycle of leaving a job, trying to get skills, trying to find another job, and it kind of keeps repeating after that. And then if that's already at the EMP level, if we think of those that are trying to just get their foot in, I wouldn't know personally how that looks, but from what we've seen recently and with everything that is still going on, it's just as difficult, because many of these volunteer opportunities or internship opportunities, a lot of things that are learned or experienced through those opportunities can't always kind of translate to careers or pathways that they really are passionate about.
Or a paycheck.
Or a paycheck. Yeah, because we all know that a lot of these volunteering, obviously unpaid, but a lot of internships are also unpaid as well. And if these people that are kind of making their transition to just be here with us can't even get these proper skills or anything, then they're kind of left in the water and more or less have to start over, whether that means going back to school or finding a completely different area of work. So, with this metaphorical mirror, for all of you that recognize yourself as an EMP, are you aware of any either programs or policies or anything that help you kind of grow either your career professionally, or maybe there's like opportunities to check out different departments. Kind of see where my head's at right now, but different departments with your organization. And this doesn't have to be like within your organization you're working at right now, but it could even be like a third-party thing. Like, have you heard of any university programs or anything? Yeah, and then would you mind sharing
Yeah, I'll grab the
Yeah,
mic.
Mike will. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Rachel. I am part of museumexpert.org, and it's a nonprofit that was born out of the pandemic to help museum professionals either stay in the field or figure out how to leave the field and what transferable skills they have that can be used elsewhere. So we have webinars, and we have, we're evolving because it's very new. Somehow I ended up as the social media lead, so that's cool. My background is education, but so that's one kind of group that might help people explore their options.
I hope you brought plenty of business cards, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people will be coming to seek you after this or at the reception. Anybody else?
What about mentorship? Do any of you have mentors? Anyone you would consider a mentor? Yeah, that's pretty common. Very rare. Oh, one person? Yeah, it can be a challenge.
Hello, my name is Sammy, and I'm actually here with my museum study group. So all of these lovely individuals over here and right here, and we get to view and learn and hopefully make some connections with everyone. So yeah.
That's great. And actually, one moment. Where exactly, is this an organization or?
That's really important information. We are from Mesa College, so we're San Diego people, and yeah, we're excited to be here. And I think our Professor Alessandra is amazing, and she's our mentor, as well as other staff at Mesa.
I will second that as well. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Handelsman. I'm Senior Director of Communications here at the NAT. One of the programs that we developed internally is called Coffee and Conversations, or something like that. It's kind of modeled off of what Balboa Park had been doing, where you are matched up on a different month with a different person from a different organization, and you meet up for coffee or a walk or what have you. So we're doing that internally here so that it's people from different departments, different generations, different backgrounds who can meet. And I think that's something that's pretty easy to implement, relatively easy, just with some time to coordinate at any type of organization.
Thanks, Rebecca.
I want to second that, Rebecca. We also over at the Fleet do that. We call that Fleet Meet. And we try our best to match up people from different departments so everybody has an opportunity to know each other. It's something that we really encourage everybody to sign up for, especially our frontline staff, because we want to give them the opportunity to meet people in other departments so that they know that there is other opportunities for them within the fleet.
And that's actually a great transition from the both of you, so thank you, because I was going to follow it up with any leadership staff members or anyone of, department heads that want to share.
Give me a second, I'm coming.
I'll meet you halfway.
And as that's happening, could we get one more hands of those considering yourself an EMP? Yeah, definitely 3/4.
It's so rare, so
Yeah.
it really is.
It's really nice to see you. My name is Carly Bitter, and I'm the director of a little natural history museum up the road, Pacific Grove Museum of Natural History. And don't be afraid to ask your leadership, what kind of hybrid jobs do we have? And I don't mean hybrid work from home, work in person, but guest services jobs, notoriously low paid, high turnover. Could there be a day that you work in the collections? Can you get that experience? We just had an opportunity to hire somebody that we have doing 3 completely different things because those were her skills. And it's really nice. And if your leadership has that kind of flexibility, make sure they're working with you, because any one day a week where you're doing something new and different and growing your career, it benefits your organization and it benefits you. Don't be afraid to ask.
Thank you very much. Oh, we got one more, Mikey. Oh, sorry.
Hi, Lindsay, California Academy of Sciences. We have a professional learning program on site called Reflecting on Practice out of UC Berkeley. Lawrence Hall of Science, and it's graduate level education that we do about 30 hours of training each year with staff from across our divisions, and we have people from guest experience to public programs to education to our scientists who sometimes will come and participate. And in addition to that, we had a paid internship program. We're going to bring it back next year. But one of our philosophies has been to never pay below living wage. So we're really working on funding right now for it because San Francisco's living wage is $27 an hour. But we really want to make sure that if we're having these programs, we're making them accessible to people so that we can help them through that. And so that's scary and tricky, but we really want to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. I'm Professor Alessandra Moctezuma, so I'm in charge of the Museum Studies programs at Mesa. And I just wanted to bring attention to the fact that we're a community college. We have a certificate program and Associate of Arts degree. It's unique in not only California, but probably the United States. And our students have a high success rate of being placed in different museums. After their internships, many of them are able to secure employment. And right now, if I went around Balboa Park, I have students working in every museum here, and MCASD and California Center for the Arts, Oceanside Museum of Art. So my goal as somebody who started as an artist and then later became a nonprofit arts person is to get the students their foot in the door even before some of them transfer to get their bachelor's. So.
Yeah, and to follow up slightly with that, USD also has a nonprofit academy, and they have a certificate for...
We can speak to that over here.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great.
Thank you for the plug.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'll come to you in a second. I have one more person on this side.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Emily. I'm the Visitor Services Manager here at the Nat. We recently had a retreat for our frontline staff. Basically, we closed the museum. We had an entire day of what do we do to support you? How do we make this better? We've been having increased customer service incidents, I will call them. So we want to figure out what can we do to make this pandemic customer service possible. And we got a lot of ideas, and a lot of it was that they felt kind of almost stuck in their job, and they felt like they couldn't connect with anyone else in the museum, and everyone else in the museum didn't understand what they were going through. And so what we've been doing is a lot of different programs, such as we make field trips throughout the museum. We have had a field trip in our rare books collection in the library. We're doing another field trip downstairs in the basement to see our herpetology wet collection. And we started a shadowing program where we're forcing all the other museum professionals here to join us for Free Tuesday, so they have to suffer with us. The same opportunities as the people who get to work upstairs, as we call it here. We're having them meet those people who have those skill sets, and they get to know different people and what they can do in the museum world.
And I promise this will be the last rep for our neck exercise. And then we'll move on to Tiana.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Jessica Hansen-York. I work at Mingay International Museum. This is my colleague, Patty Serenero from Moxie Research. We co-teach an Arts and Culture Leadership Certificate that's part of the USD Nonprofit Master's Program. And I know we have at least one student in the room right now. We have scholarship opportunities. And we have students who come from a lot of different arts and cultural organizations, many of them EMPs from throughout the region.
After you finish at Mesa, come on over to us. That's all I got.
Great, thanks so much. And you can get in touch with either of us if you're interested, but scholarships available.
Thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, it was great that all this came up because there was a slight worry that there wouldn't be too much sharing in terms of what's going on, and I'm glad none of you were really afraid of this metaphorical mirror that I placed in front of y'all. But that time is done, so I'm taking that away, and we're going to go on to Tiana to share what we're doing here at San Diego EMP to kind of help bridge that gap and everything as well.
It's really great to hear all those things happening. I wrote down every single one of them so I can add them to our resource page. Thank you very much. We think it's important when we're talking about the issues that San Diego, or not only just San Diego, but emerging museum professionals are experiencing. It's important to also discuss how we as a community can help the community be stronger together. And one of the things that we did when we started our new board was that we thought about creating an outreach and advocacy committee, which I'm proudly on. And that outreach and advocacy committee was built to address the direct needs of our members. That means talking to our members and seeing what they need. Constantly, every time we have an event, I make it my mission to ask people, like, what do you want from us? What do you need from us? That also allows us to be transparent with each other on the board. If we see something if we're planning an event and we think there may be an accessibility issue, for example, we're really looking to address that issue and fix it, because we don't want to be, yes, accessibility is important, and then we leave an entire group of folks out. It just doesn't make any sense. We are also, with the Outreach and Advocacy Committee, we revamped our job board like 3 times. We had multiple conversations about what the job board should look like. As Mikey mentioned, we think that salary transparency is really important, but we also recognize that not everyone in our community is able to be picky with that. So we decided to include all museums in San Diego on our job board, including those who unfortunately don't disclose their salary. But what we did was that on top of that, we added tips and tricks for our members to really look for a job that works for them. One of the tips on there is look for the salary, and then the second tip on there, and I wish it could be a higher number, but unfortunately it's just not possible right now, is to look for jobs that at least pay $16 an hour. That's not much, especially here in San Diego. It's pretty expensive to live here. Love it, it's my hometown, but it's expensive. But we hope that museums are at least paying their staff $16 an hour. It's the least that people need to live. With that being said, one of my favorite tips and tricks on our website is to actually go to the museum that you're thinking of applying to and see if it's a fit for you. Sometimes you read a job and you look at the museum, you Google it, you're researching hardcore, and then you're like, this is the perfect museum for me. I'm gonna apply. You get the job, you interview, and then your first day of work seems okay, and then 2 months in, you're like, this is not really for me. Like, this is not the mission I'm going for. This is not really speaking to my personal passions. I think it's important to just go check out the museum. I always encourage talking to staff at the museum. Please do not interrogate them, that's not fun. But just having a casual conversation, especially with frontline staff, you can learn a lot about the museum that you're potentially gonna work at. And that's pretty much all the tips and tricks we have currently on our website. But if you have any tips and tricks that you think would be really great for our members to know, please let us know. I'm happy to add them if they are fantastic. I'm always down for constructive criticism. Another one of the things that we're doing, not only in that advocacy and outreach committee, but also in our board in general, we are trying to have programming that people actually want. It's fun. Happy hours are great, you know? We love networking. We love drinks, most of us. I love food. That's great. But and we think it's also important to get tools on how to succeed in the jobs that you actually want. So, for example, just this year alone, I should start with, we are trying to have an event every month, which has been fun? Yeah? Okay, great. Yeah, it's been fun. We've had some really cool events so far this year. In January, we had how to get the job that you really want. That was fun. And then go ahead, Nikki.
I was going to say that was also a hybrid event. So
Yes.
thinking about accessibility, when and where we can, we're doing hybrid events. So that's another just feather in our cap.
Yeah. And then our February event was all about diversity, inclusion, equity, and accessibility. So we had a panel discussion featuring some local museum professionals. Some of them are in this room today, so thank you guys, you're amazing. Which was also a lot of fun, one of our larger turnouts since we became a board together. And then of course, we're gonna continue to do the happy hours and things like that. But we also want to be able to provide things that you folks really need to succeed in your career because, I mean, as our title says, it's brutal out here. And we want to make sure that you have the tools that you need to succeed. Now, going forward, you don't just stop with what you're doing, you keep going. We hope to have mental health resources on our website. So, with that being said, because I've been looking and I don't want to just be simple and just put mental health resources that I find on other websites. I would like to have some things that are local to our area. So if you know any, please grab me after this and grab any of us after this and tell us, because we want to add that to our resource page. We think it's important to think about your personal life as well as your professional life. I don't think one is more important than the other, and if I had to choose, it should be yourself. We just want to be able to have those resources for folks on our website. And then we're also thinking, and it's been said a lot today, I'm really excited about this, mentorship. We'd love to have a mentorship program with SEMP. So, sounded like a lot of you guys are interested in being mentors. Don't shy away now. If you are interested in talking to us about potentially doing that, please let us know. We don't know what that looks like exactly, but we're happy to hear any ideas. Even for our emerging museum professionals, if you have an idea of what that looks like for you, please let us know so we can go ahead and make that resource available for you. I think that's all I got.
I left this one on. So how can your museum help? It sounds like a lot of museums are already offering a lot of great programs. So for EMPs who are listening, definitely I encourage you to talk to your bosses. I encourage you to talk to your supervisors. They can be some of your best allies. I personally have benefited from so many amazing women in my life along my career journey. And you never know who is there and willing to share what they know. But aside from that, one of the most important things that we talk about often is prioritizing a work-life balance. I think that's hugely important because a lot of young professionals wear a lot of hats in their museums, especially with small staff, and burnout is real and it happens, and we can't afford to lose any more amazing emerging workers in the field. We've got to make sure that the next generation of museums is well-staffed with passionate people who are interested in change. So post honest salary ranges in your job descriptions. So I think we're encouraging people to put a job, what do I call it? Oh, a salary in general. But I would encourage you to make sure that it's honest because it's a good use of your time and it's a good use of the people that you'll be interviewing. So just make sure it's an honest description too. You might think to yourself, this is really scary. We're not going to find a person who can do all of this. If you can find a person who can do 60%, I guarantee you can teach them the other 40. But be honest about what they're getting into at your institution. You never know. So speaking of job descriptions, make sure that you're reviewing your language. Think about in terms of accessibility. So I talked earlier about how education is a barrier to access for a lot of people. And I don't know, maybe I have the privilege of saying this because I have a master's degree, but I actually think most people don't need one. And for what we do, I think it's just a way of limiting and gatekeeping positions from people who cannot afford to have the degree. So if there's a creative, certainly I want my doctor to have a medical degree, but if there's an opportunity to say, hey, we're interested in hands-on training, or if you have work experience, we can prioritize that over education or in place of. So thinking about creative ways and how we're reinforcing both racial, ethnic, and class bias in our job descriptions. And unpaid internships. This is a tough one, if and when you can. I hope that one day I'm in a position where I don't have to have unpaid interns because I feel so passionate about it, but not all of us are in that position yet, and not all of our institutions can afford it. But I think it's definitely something to work towards as an end goal or something to potentially fundraise for. But if you can, you should pay your interns. And this one's my favorite. Include emerging staff members on your committees and your panels. You never know what a fresh set of eyes can bring in terms of an opinion or just letting them know what the decision-making process is like. There's a lot of mystery between an emerging position and the decision makers. And a lot of people leave because of that mystery. So if you invite them in and let them see that process and teach them how to communicate and how to work with board members in a meaningful and positive way, I think everyone will benefit from a system where we're helping each other along. And I think it's time for Q&A. So does anyone have any questions? We'll come up with microphones again. Questions? I don't mind the stairs. Okay.
Sorry, I have to listen to me again. I'm curious, you guys mentioned that you still post jobs for museums that aren't posting their salaries. And I think you said because they can't all be, so everyone can't be picky about it. I'm just wondering, a lot of organizations say that they're really passionate about making salaries transparent, but they still accept and post jobs that don't post their salary, and it just kind of feels like the problem continues because nobody's actually taking a hard stance against it and not posting if they're not posting their salary. So I'm just wondering, where do we go from there? How do we change that?
I'm happy to take this one. So it was a really tough decision to make because I really do believe in salary transparency. I think it's ridiculous for someone to expect someone to apply for a job and not tell them what they're going to pay. It just doesn't make any sense. But I think I wanted to go hardcore on it. I wanted to just, I don't want to use that term, that's really bad. But I just really want to go in and just say, hey, if you don't post your salary, hey, maybe you should do better. Yeah. This is 2022, reevaluate yourself. But I realize that's a little bit too aggressive. So we got lucky because when I was going to suggest to our board sending out emails to HR departments across San Diego County and saying, hey, post your salary, the National EMP Network started a campaign for where they were going to be the person for that. They were going to be the liaison to help you get those museums to post their salary. So my opinion is if you see a job that you like, or you see a museum that you like, but for some odd reason they decided not to post a salary, make your way over to the National EMP website. They are actively trying to get museums to do the thing. So that would be my advice going forward. Also, if we want to be radical, we can just ignore all the museums that don't post their salary. But again, I just feel like that excludes a lot of folks who don't have the luxury of looking at those things, and usually those are people of color and people who come from low-income households. I hope I answered that question.
So we're talking about, having salary transparency as well as taking down the gate for people to have access to careers in the museum. But how do we go about getting from where we're at right now and encouraging these museums to continue to push forward, especially with letting people that maybe don't have the educational background to get into some positions that maybe we don't really need that educational background, to your point from earlier. How do we encourage that change?
I'm happy to take that one. I think the best thing that we can always do is to deepen our own pool, right? So when we're posting job descriptions and we are offering opportunities to artists or to people that we're working with, generally we're not going very much further than the first 10 people we can think of. And so we need to diversify our own personal networks. That's hugely important, and that's something an individual can do and can benefit the entire staff. And also think creatively. Is there someone that you know who is doing amazing work that might have a good suggestion? And I think sometimes the door can't just be open, sometimes you need an invitation. And so making it very clear we're a museum that is interested in hiring these types of people for this specific reason, and making your intentions transparent, right? We have to develop trust between our communities, both the communities that the museum serves, but also the community within the museum.
And also to follow up on that, your new programs or whatever it might be, it doesn't have to start off like super big or like super crazy. Like was it Fleet Meet, Rebecca? Is that what it's called?
Fleet Meet.
Yeah. So like those things can just start off with a couple people, and then if it slowly starts to grow, that's when you kind of invest into it more. But it doesn't have to always start off as this huge, over-encompassing thing where like it's trying to reach all kinds of people. Sometimes it's just a few people that just need time to themselves to really come together and just talk.
Absolutely. Okay, got a hand over here.
Thank you. Daniel Ronan again, your resident Texan, hello. I think this is a really great topic. I serve as a board member for ICOM US, the International Council of Museums, and I am the youngest member by like 15 years, and I'm 33 this month. So I just want to also promote board membership and involvement as something that is really critical to developing yourself as a professional in the nonprofit space. But also, I don't know who participated in Museums Advocacy Day last week for the American Alliance of Museums, because I think that's really a critical space where, as emerging professionals, I think we're all professionals, right? So we don't have to call ourselves emerging because we're here and we're a part of this community. Public service loan forgiveness programs, we can be advocating for that. We can be advocating for a single payer healthcare for all, so we don't have benefits suppressing wages, right? When it comes to the nonprofit space, I think there are bigger issues that as a museum field we can collectively tackle that can really help change the facts on the ground. And then one last thing, you had up there about the language in the job descriptions. I've also read that longer job descriptions tend to push women job seekers away from jobs. So just keep it tight, right? And your job posting or job description is not your wish list of everything this person could possibly do. And then finally, I'm heartened to see a lot of the certificate programs here. I think they're very practical programs instead of broader museum studies, whatever that is. Those practical programs, the nonprofit certificate programs in nonprofit management, those are great and really apply. And I think the applied service of a board position would really help you bring those skills to the table. So anyway, you're all professionals, emerging or not. Congrats.
If I could, I would second the idea of joining boards. I was very hesitant about applying to the board position with SDAP, and then after the third call, I was like, all right, we're going to do it. And I got it, and it's been great, so I would highly encourage doing that. Any other questions?
All right, I'm coming down.
So as San Diego EMPs, are you covering jobs in neighboring areas like Riverside County and those areas as well? And I'm well disclosed, I'm a Gen X, so I'm coming from that mindset. And I know that I moved across the United States multiple times to stay in my career field, which was a requirement when I was coming up. And what I'm hearing here is that this is people here in San Diego that want to work, that have planted themselves here and want the job in San Diego, which is sort of a new concept to me. So I'm asking about that. One reason is because last August, my site posted on CAM a job, Perfect Emerging Professional, on Indeed and in the local area. It is a job that was going to pay between $50 and $60. That was not disclosed for full transparency. This is something that I am talking with my HR about. However, had anybody called on that job, they would have found out that we do 6% retirement matching. So Gen Xers and baby boomers know that's the big deal, especially in your 20s. We have a 5-day vacation paid for every Christmas. We pay for conference attendance. There are a lot of perks had somebody called. Not one application came through any of the museum job areas, not one inquiry. I ended up hiring someone who was doing education work in the medical field. She came in, she challenged the salary, we negotiated, we also laid out all the other benefits that she was going to have. We took her around, she said, this is the culture I want, I will take the slight, we can't compete with medical salaries. I will take the cut in that, I want this job, because it got to a point where I said, this is as high as I can go. We said master's preferred, she doesn't have a master's, but she wanted the job, she called, she did the footwork. That was a job that I would have loved to have given to an EMP that already had that museum experience, and I couldn't do it. And that is not the only, when I started sharing this with other coworkers who are not necessarily comfortable with discussing it, they're having the same thing. There are jobs out there that no one is going for, and I'm trying to figure out why. And it isn't just salary. It feels like they're very location specific. Somebody, and I get it, if you grow up in an area, you don't want to leave, you want that area. But I'm just wondering what else is contributing to that, because it seems like there's more going on than just some of these items that we keep identifying.
To answer your first question about how far we go with our job posting, we do, on our website, we post CAM's job directory as well as like the American Alliance of Museums directory and things like that. I think that's a great idea. We should probably branch out a little bit further with our job board itself. But I also think if you have a job that you want, EMP to apply for, you can always email us. That's one thing I forgot to mention, is that with our job board, because we have everyone listed regardless of whether or not they disclose their salary, we are also doing what we call job highlights. So if you're in dire need, no one's applying, you're trying to figure out why, please just send it to us. We're happy to post it on our social medias. We just ask that you send it our way. I don't know if I can speak to this idea of not wanting to branch out of San Diego, because I've worked different parts of California before. So I can't really speak to that part of it. Honestly, I wish I would have known about this job a year ago. Right? To be honest. Because that's a really good salary. And it sounds great. So,
Posted in collections, so if you're a collections person, you want to go to the Sunnylands website, there's an awesome opportunity right now.
I know a couple of folks who might be interested.
Well, does anyone in the audience want to answer to this question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. We got some hands over here.
Unfortunately, we think it might be where you're located for that, because I don't think people want to live there. Sorry. But it's also like relocating is really expensive too, and if it's not a sure thing, or if,
So can I jump on that too? I heard something earlier that said, you get someplace and it's after a couple months you decide it's not matching all of your check boxes. When I started at Sunnylands, I was a little concerned about the sustainability mission because they didn't have someone there before me setting it up, but I stayed. And we have gone from an organization who thought that a lead project with solar and geothermal was checking the boxes, we're good, we are a green site, to going out to full board programming, protecting coyotes on our site, to doing all of these other things that never would, had I left after 3 months, they may not have been there, and I may not have found a place that I was happy. Don't shy away from baby stepping, changing your institution from within, and expecting an institution to change just because you're there and you have passions that they're not recognizing yet. You can't change institutions from the inside. It's significant, and leaving it doesn't change that institution from the inside either.
I feel like we're getting at something that's happening outside of the museum sector as well with the Great Recession. Thinking about generational shifts and how thinking about work is. Millennials and Gen Zers are much more likely to job hop. So that's one thing, right? That's part of our culture is we're like, oh, job up for 6 months, perfect. And I think the other thing too is just that everyone right now is seeing opportunities, especially with COVID, to kind of make their own way and their own path. And so I don't think it's unique to museums that people are struggling to fill jobs, especially in maybe less desirable locations or, for whatever reason. I think part of it is just the culture of the moment that we're struggling with too.
Okay, got some hands over here.
I don't know that my situation is terribly common, but I wanted to speak to the relocation question that you had. I'm an older student who's doing a career change. And so I have a lot of limitations because I have children, and so the relocation isn't a possibility. As much as that job sounds amazing, I'm Gen X, and so I'm not in a position to do that. And so I think that might be, people have personal limitations, whether it's their age or their family or health reasons or whatnot, that may limit them from being able to, reach outside of their current location.
Okay, so I was just informed that we are at our time. But I want to thank everyone for coming to our panel today. And thank you all so much for your participation. I think this could easily have gone on for another half an hour. So I encourage you to keep chatting with each other and with your staff. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to reach down. I think I said it at the beginning, but I'll say it again. The best investment you can make is in your staff. Absolutely. So thank you so much.